Welcome to this special presentation of the Channel Company, Why High Availability is No Substitute for Recoverability. 5 nines, 99.999% uptime. That is the standard to which all so-called high availability systems aspire, and very few can achieve. Whether or not organizations can actually provide an IT service or application with essentially no downtime, much of the conversation about high availability seems to center on virtualization. Conventional wisdom holds that virtualized environments can be designed to fail over quickly, and redundant virtual clusters can be built faster and more cost-effectively than physical clusters or distributed computing systems. Although this is most certainly the case, too many organizations, and especially their non-technical decision makers, equate high availability system designs with the ability to quickly recover from a disaster. But while some businesses have the resources and wherewithal to replicate and distribute their high availability critical systems in data centers around the world, the reality for most organizations is that too many high availability systems are just a hardware failure, or SDE, site destroying event, away from no availability. That is our topic for today. Today's event with the Channel Company is live and interactive, so we do invite you to submit your questions or comments, horror stories, whatever, by utilizing that Ask a Question feature on your viewing console. We're going to also ask that if you have any pop-up blockers enabled, that you go ahead and take a moment to shut those off at this time, as we're going to be pushing out a brief survey in just a little bit. And one lucky viewer today is going to be receiving a $100 Amazon gift card. So you're going to want to make sure that you pay attention for that. You'll be notified after today's event. Hello, everyone. My name is Jonas Tichenor, and I am the Director of Content for the Channel Company and a CRN contributing editor. Today I'll be your moderator for this event. And joining me is Senior Editor with CRN, Chris Dawson. Chris, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to spend with us today on this important topic.
Glad to be here.
Also, a very special guest, as you can probably tell just by the sheer size of his photograph, we have Stephen Snyder, the Technical Marketing Manager with StorageCraft. Stephen, you're looking good, my brother.
Thanks, Jonas. You're making me laugh.
And we're going to be diving in and hearing a lot more about StorageCraft in just a moment. But first I wanted to dive in with Chris Dawson. Chris, I'm loving this reference to the 5 nines. It leaves little room for error. As we point out in the introduction, it is what everybody is aspiring to and no one can achieve, and that's really the point today, is to dive in of this idea of high availability may not be as important as high recoverability.
Well, that's exactly right. Even if every one of us, everyone who had a mission-critical application that simply couldn't go down, even if we could all achieve that 99.999% uptime, what happens when something really goes wrong beyond just all of the standard things we're going to talk about in a minute that allow us to achieve very high levels of uptime? So, when we talk about high availability, though, this 5 nines, the shameless reference to Monty Python here, the holy grail of IT performance, this is when you have sites and applications that simply can't go down. Your customers depend on them, your business depends on them, your clients depend on them. So it's hard to achieve. It requires lots and lots of money, and it requires a very substantial infrastructure, whether you're virtualized or not. It requires a lot of infrastructure to make this happen. So let's pop to that next slide, and we'll think a little bit about what exactly it does take. To really achieve high availability, like the highest of availability, you need to have multiple servers. They can be virtualized or they can be physical servers. You need to have multiple clusters of those servers, and you need to have multiple sites with multiple clusters on them. And then you need to have advanced replication, keeping all of these things talking to each other. So there's lots of points of failure that can happen there. There's lots of things that can go wrong. Done right, you end up with very often a very large-scaled virtualized environment with great failover, great redundancy, and all the things that cost a lot of money, but really, if your applications are that critical, then you're willing to make that investment. So that's all well and good, and we know the formula, the cookbook, so to speak, for achieving high availability. But the reality is sometimes a bit different. So if we look at our next slide, then the first thing that we start thinking is, well, okay, we need high availability, but we really can't afford the ultimate in high availability, that holy grail, so to speak. So what's the first thing we start cutting to still achieve substantial availability, but perhaps not the 5 nines? Well, we start cutting sites. We start cutting the redundancy that's required to make this happen, because how many organizations really can have multiple physical sites distributed, at least maybe on opposite coasts, for example? In some recent natural disasters, availability across multiple sites on the same coast probably wouldn't have done many people much good. And in fact, many people found out that it didn't do them any good because there were site-destroying events that occurred up and down the coast. So if we think about what we'd have to do, we'd have to have things maybe replicated to Europe or Asia, East and West Coast. That gets really expensive really fast. So we start cutting out that level of redundancy. We actually have to balance. We're business people. We have to balance dollars with availability. So looking at the next slide, of course, if you start eliminating that redundancy, then you don't have the replication on that really massive scale that you need, and a critical hardware failure, your load balancer goes down, a site controller goes down, replication gets corrupted, or a site-destroying event wipes out your site. Now all of a sudden, you're not just down, but you're really down. You have, as Jonas said earlier, you go from high availability very quickly to no availability. And jumping ahead, really the key message today is that high availability and recoverability are very different things. And we're going to hear from StorageCraft in a little bit, and one of their really important messages is this idea of recoverability. But thinking about that in a very practical sense, when disaster strikes, when replication fails or worse is corrupted, and you end up with nonsense kind of blasted across your high availability infrastructure, and your hardware fails, bad patches get replicated, then all of a sudden now we're starting to talk about, well, how do we recover to a point where we can become available again? And that's very different than being able to say, well, hey, we've got sites all over the place. We have all these things in place to make sure that anyone anywhere in the world can access our content or our applications. It's very different than being able to recover from something when something goes wrong. I have my little screen bean here because I love screen beans, and everyone loves screen beans. But all too often we hear, especially from, as Jonas pointed out, these non-technical decision makers, well, you have 99.999% uptime. Why would you possibly need to back that up? Why would you need to have a backup when you are replicating across multiple computers, servers, even multiple sites? Well, such as it would be great if you could substitute those things, but you can't. Now, of course, on our next slide, we see more screen beans, an angry screen bean and a sad screen bean. And, again, this is there's a certain naivete often among decision makers outside of IT, but who are ultimately control the purse strings. Johnson, why is our e-commerce site still down? He says, you said it was highly available. Well, as it turns out, in this fictional case, it was the backup that was the problem. So we may have been able to recover quickly had we had a really robust, solid backup system in place. So if an application can't go down, the fundamental question is how long can you wait to restore functionality? We've identified these applications and sites as utterly mission critical and in need of the investment for high availability. How long can we wait for them to be recovered? Really, jumping to the next slide, there's 3 words, especially for the MSPs who are managing these high availability sites. The 3 words are service level agreement. Okay, this is what you get when things go right. You can charge a nice premium for very solid service level agreements. When things go wrong, well, certainly the managed service provider is losing money, losing clients, and losing credibility. So ultimately, the issue of recoverability and availability go hand in hand, and especially in the channel, this is the sort of thing that can make or break a business. If you are managing sites and your clients have put their trust in you to make this happen, then the last thing you need is to have an inability to bring their sites back should something go wrong. Now, this actually brings up an interesting point, though, about opportunities for MSPs. If we're talking about MSPs and service providers who are really in the business of making sure their clients are always online, always up, well, then, in fact, image-based backup and recovery tools very much support that. They support the rapid provisioning and replication of virtual machines. So even creating the infrastructure to do this can be supported by these backup and recovery tools. And, of course, they help create very rapidly environments where you can fail over to in even public cloud infrastructures. So if you've invested money as a service provider or you've built systems out for your clients that can fail over, then do public cloud infrastructure as needed, that can really be supported very well by image-based backup tools. We'll learn about some specific ones later, in fact, very shortly. But what this allows and what these sorts of backup and recovery tools allow is for you to maintain nearly live backups of an environment. Those environments can be extremely complex. So being able to maintain a snapshot, and a frequent snapshot of these backups and of this environment is the sort of thing that allows you to flip a switch essentially and have your clients back up online in an extremely short amount of time instead of potentially days or weeks that can take to bring back a highly complex environment. The other piece for MSPs that they need to think about is actually educating clients. Clients need to understand the difference between availability and recoverability. And they need to understand that just providing the service of a high availability site or application is very different from making sure that it can be recovered quickly in the event of a disaster. And well, along with education comes opportunities for sales. So the sale and management of appropriate disaster recovery solutions to go with the high availability applications and sites that you're selling. Ultimately, what you want to provide is the most reliable and most available solutions, which of course brings us to the chance to talk about StorageCraft and what they can bring to this particular context.
Thank you, Chris. I really like how you show that there's a balance between the cost involved in the decision and the return on the income in the investment. Excuse me, I'm fumbling over my words today. It feels like a Friday, but basically there is that balance with all of these elements in play. There's, as you mentioned, image-based backups, SLAs, reliability, a lot of these keywords coming to play saying, how do we conduct a business, whether we're an MSP or a small or medium-sized business owner, how do we conduct a business that is able to go forward in time? It's profitable, we're able to have this business continuity, and how do we do that in a situation where we balance high availability with something like a disaster recovery plan? Well, in this case, I'm going to talk about business continuity from the perspective of high availability and disaster recovery. But that begs the question, what is business continuity? And basically, business continuity is, well, it's not, as you mentioned, high availability, because 5 nines, although that's a definite ideal to hold out for, it's not often attainable. And in the real world, it doesn't usually happen. There is some downtime at some point in the real world. It isn't also disaster recovery as far as a disaster recovery goes, because fortunately we're not living disaster to disaster in our lives. We're looking at a stretch of business with maybe an interruption here and there. So business continuity is it's more of looking at, to be specific, building in the resilience into our business plan so that our processes and our practices are built around the ability to recover from a business or to manage, to recover from a disaster or to manage disasters properly. And in this case, disaster recovery tools can definitely bridge the gap to getting you towards business continuity. Business continuity has a number of applications. Let's take, for example, a small store, an Acme store, for just as an example, that sells widgets online. They have a brick and mortar location, but they've also got some kind of an online web presence. Maybe this is a small business with 15 employees, and maybe you're the business owner, or maybe you're the MSP providing services to this business. In either case, the small business has maybe a database server, a web server, on their domain and maybe some exchange. Basically, as far as this business goes, there are a lot of things that can affect their business continuity. There's obviously changes in the economy. If you have problems with a recession, unemployment, these things could all affect the business. Disruptive technologies. If this is a small business, things like virtualization might be a disruptive technology. Maybe if they're not virtual, they're being left behind. Natural disasters. You mentioned some of those disasters along the East Coast. There's natural disasters that seem to be occurring more frequently every day. Maybe it's just we have more real-time reporting through the news and media, but to be honest, there seems to be a lot of natural disasters out there. But even with that, I think the most common interruption in businesses is an IT disaster. A server's down, connectivity is lost, data is lost. For whatever reason, these things are all affecting your business continuity. And in our little small fictitious business, the Acme Widget Company, these things are going to affect how that business is, whether it's profitable or not. In the case of an IT disaster, it might be a hardware failure. This might be something where memory in the system is malfunctioning and we need to replace some memory chips. Maybe it's a hard disk drive that has failed and we need to hot swap that out in our RAID so that we can continue moving forward. Maybe it's a power supply failure. We need redundant power supplies. Network cabling and switches. All of these things impact hardware in the hardware architecture in our fictional business. And then again, there's also the software side of this. Perhaps this is a software bug that is causing problems with our business service. Maybe we just recently applied the latest patch or fix to our operating system, and that has caused problems with our system. We try to separate out the workloads and processes in these businesses to help manage and aid in troubleshooting for these resources, but there's always some point of problem that keeps us from that holy grail, as you mentioned, of the 5 nines. I think it's interesting that virtualization can be key to managing your resources, but it also adds that extra layer of complexity that we need to manage. So when we're looking at the software failures, all of this ties into how do we build that reliability, that flexibility, that resilience into our business so that we can have business continuity. A couple more items to talk about. What about data availability? Now, I'm going to talk about data availability as one of the first concepts in terms of managing our business critical data. In this case, the idea is, can I get to my data? I want to be able to access my data anytime, anywhere, and any way I want to. And in the case of our Acme Widgets Company, this may mean that the customer is coming online to our website and they want to place some orders or they want to view inventory. I'm also going to talk a little bit about data durability and how that fits into this whole idea of business continuity, high availability, and recoverability. And data durability to me is basically, is my data complete? What's the state that it's in? Is the data accurate? Maybe I've got web rot, maybe I've got corrupt data, lost data. It could be any number of these things. Now when we're talking about availability and durability, let's dig a little bit deeper into these and see how these specific concepts affect business continuity. Is it possible for your customer to have one of these, to have availability without durability, or to have durability without availability and still run an effective business? Well, in this case, let's say that we're looking at data availability. And as you mentioned earlier, Chris, this could be any number of hardware and software architectures that we've built in. It could be load balancing across multiple application servers. It could be failover devices in a cluster. It could be virtualized resources like servers and storage, so that any of these systems are creating high availability. And in fact, this is where high availability fits in, is the data availability. This is crucial to the can I access my data when I need to access it side of the equation. In this case, it's different from data durability, because data durability is basically looking at the content itself. Is the SQL database, is it not corrupted? Is it properly indexed for speed? I want to make sure that I go through and run maintenance on it every so often, so that when I'm trying to get to the content inside that SQL database, that my integrity checks have ensured me that that data is accurate. Maybe it's an antivirus issue. I definitely don't want viruses or malware infecting my business systems. Maybe I'm looking at redundancy. I'm implementing RAID or mirroring, or maybe in this case I want to look at solid backups. And I think it's interesting because I put solid backups here last, but if I were to pick any one of these entries, if you think about it, which of these can you simply not live without? If you have one of these, you can possibly get by with all the rest. In this case, if I have a solid backup, I think that data integrity today I can restore to a previous time when the data is accurate. That helps. It's not a pure solution, but it helps. If I get infected with a virus or malware today, a solid backup definitely can help me recover from that. Redundancy issues. If I am having problems with the data in those terms, solid backups becomes critical in ensuring data durability. So if I were to pick any one of these in my list as the best, the most important item, I would look at solid backups. And the reason I'm doing that is if I take availability and durability and I take one of those out of the equation, what if my data is durable but it's not available? So for our Acme Widget Company, this might be a situation where the data is on the web server. The customer comes online to make an e-commerce transaction. They want to look at the inventory I have available, but they can't see that inventory. Or maybe they can't read reviews about my products on my web server. Or maybe they can't place an order. Definitely, that's a big issue. In each of those cases, the data is on my systems. It's there. It's just that it's not accessible. And that becomes a problem to how I'm running my business, to my business continuity. This is where high availability fits in. Now, what if the data is durable, but it's not available? Well, as I mentioned, that's server outages, power loss, network interruption, any of these types of situations that can impact how available this data is. Let's take the flip side of this for a moment. What if the data is available, but it's not durable? Well, what kinds of examples can we think of there? This might be a situation where the web server is running properly for this business, Acme Widget Company, and yet the data on it is missing, or perhaps it's corrupt and it's causing errors when it's being accessed through the web server, the website application. Or maybe this was maliciously deleted or accidentally deleted. It could be any number of issues, but as you can see, if the data is available but not durable, we're still not in a situation that's profitable for the business. We simply cannot have one without the other. You need to have both. And that's why we look at this in terms of an overall comprehensive solution for either for your business or for your customers' businesses in terms of building out properly organized virtual structures, storage, RAID, mirroring. You'd want to have some kind of monitoring process in place. All of these things help you to minimize the technical issues and to address the human element, because machines really don't make mistakes. It's people that make mistakes. And machines will just do whatever we tell them to. So if we tell them to delete something, they'll delete it. If we tell them to copy something someplace, they'll copy it. In this case, we want to minimize that so that this business is as ongoing and resilient as possible. And of course, the human side fits in with malicious intent as well. There might be hackers, malware, viruses, and even disgruntled employees that decide to say goodbye on a less than equitable fashion. But the whole idea here is that we want to have a solution that provides not only high availability but recoverability. Now, as far as StorageCraft is concerned, we have a philosophy here that basically you want to be able to recover in any situation you can. We want to provide you with the tools that empower you to recover no matter what the situation. And as a backup and recovery solution, we look at this in terms of the recoverability. It's all about the recovery. Yes, our slogan is backup fast, recover faster, but that's just part of this equation. And I want to show you in just a minute how not only do we provide the durability side of the equation, but we also help with the availability side as well. So the overall idea here is we have a recoverability solution. This solution has, of course, our award-winning backup software. Now, this is going to be something that is a reliable software. And I wonder sometimes, how do we stress the point that this is reliable? Because there are a lot of software vendors out there, a lot of options, a lot of different price points. And really what you want is something that you can just go to sleep at night knowing that your backups are happening and that if anything should happen to interrupt your business, you can recover. So our number one thing in here is, of course, the backup, and that's the first part of this equation. It's the reliable backup and recovery software. But there's more to it. You also want to be able to replicate your backup images because 2 copies is more safe than 1, and 3 copies would, of course, be more safe than 2. So in our product suite, we have a replication tool. It's an administration tool I'll talk about shortly that basically allows you to go in and to replicate your backup chains, to manage them properly, which is the next step, managing your backup chains. And all of this happens as part of our overall recoverability solution. We're making it so that it's easy to have the backup images and to manage them, whether that's compressing them, consolidating them, replicating them offsite with WAN bandwidth scheduling and throttling, any of these functions that, of course, make your life a lot easier and make your business and your backup and recovery solution scalable. And then, of course, there is the all-important 4th step, which is the ability to recover. Now, a lot of these systems out there will let you take a backup, but really when it comes down to it, it's all about the recovery. And I think if we were going to underscore any of these 4 items, the recovery is probably the most critical. And in this case, let's talk about it in terms of how this fits into your business continuity. So let's start out, first of all, with the reliable disaster recovery solution that we provide. It's part of, as I mentioned, our overall business continuity solution. And I want to address shortly how that fits in with the durability and the availability of your systems so that you're highly available. Your business can provide not only a high availability for your data, but also, and your business critical systems, but also durability. We're designed specifically for small to medium-sized businesses, which allows us to not only give our partners, the MSPs and VARs, tremendous benefit in managing their customers, but also if you're one of our direct customers as well, this is built for you. This is built to fit your specific needs and your budget. And the idea, as I mentioned, is that we want you to be able to recover anytime, anywhere from any disaster. You are empowered. Now, let's talk a moment about how this all fits together. Well, in our product suite, we have our StorageCraft backup, our StorageCraft Shadow Protect software. This is our backup software. It's the little blue shield in the top left corner, and basically what it is it's a legendary software. We've won a number of awards for this product, but it's all based on reliability. It's an agent-based software solution, and I could tell you volumes about why we picked an agent versus an agentless solution. We just look at it as a tried and true solution that's going to make sure that your backups are as reliable and as efficient and fast as possible. It's also an image-based solution. And what does that mean? Well, it means that we're looking at whole systems. We're looking at your operating system. You're looking at your installed applications, running services, custom configuration, and of course your all-important data. So when we're looking at an image-based solution, we want you to be able to take this as the entire system. And then if you need to recover either the entire system or recover files and folders, whatever you need to, you have the ability to recover as you need it, where you need it, how you need it. And of course, the nice thing about being an image-based solution is that we have hardware independence built into our Shadow Protect software. This allows us to back up from an AMD chipset and restore to an Intel chipset. It allows us to back up from VMware Hypervisor to a Hyper-V hypervisor. It allows us to back up from old legacy hardware and restore to new hardware. The whole idea is that you have that power, that flexibility to deal with any kind of interruption to your business continuity that you need to. As I mentioned, we have a number of hypervisors that we support. We support obviously the big two, the Hyper-V, Microsoft's Hyper-V, as well as VMware's vSphere. But we also support a couple other hypervisors. We support Citrix XenServer. We support Oracle's VirtualBox. We support Red Hat KVM. And this gives you tremendous reach into, if you're an MSP, managing not only one type of customer, but a number of different types of customers and meeting their specific needs. The interesting thing is that with Moore's Law these days, hardware really only lasts maybe 3 to 5 years of usable life. And you're constantly looking at ways of, if you're virtualized, how do you upgrade the hosts in a few years? Or if you're not virtualized and you have laptops or servers, physical servers, how do you move to a virtual system? Or how do you upgrade the hardware for new laptops or whatever? All of these things, we can accommodate those through a simple backup and then a recovery using our hardware independent restore. So it's a tremendous tool here to make your life easier, to make your business more resilient to change over time. Then the next thing we have on the list here is the StorageCraft Image Manager. Now, StorageCraft Image Manager, it handles our replication tools. I mentioned a few other things that it does as well. It also does automatic alerting. It also does image chain consolidation. It does a lot of, it does our replication from either on-site or off-site into the cloud. And on this page, we also are mentioning our StorageCraft Cloud Services. Chris, you mentioned that if you had a business on the East Coast, it might have been a benefit to have this business an off-site repository on the West Coast as well because of a site-destroying event like a superstorm. Well, in this case, we have multiple cloud services data centers across the U.S. and Canada. And the idea here is that we are providing you with the ability to build in that geographical independence into your system without having to spend large amounts of money for a colo or something like that in a different location. So in this case, we want you to be able to replicate whether that's an on-site replication, an off-site replication to your own cloud services provider or a remote office or to a colo, as I mentioned, or in fact to replicate to StorageCraft's cloud services. And if you have a chance, definitely check out our cloud services. They're pretty whiz-bang. The next step in this is managing your backup chains. And as far as that goes, Image Manager fits into this as well because it's basically our image handler. It's going to go through there and periodically check and then again recheck, verifying your backup image's integrity. So if you're concerned about durability, you can be sure that Image Manager is checking that the snapshot that you took at that point in time is still a valid snapshot. And that should you need to recover, you can. We also have our StorageCraft Shadow Control, and you'll notice that that's that purple band along the bottom because it really encapsulates monitoring for not only your StorageCraft Image Manager solution, but it also monitors your StorageCraft Shadow Protect. It's an overall single pane of glass for monitoring everything in the solution. So at this point, I just wanted to mention, if I don't know if there are any questions out there yet, but I wanted to make sure that if you have any questions, or if you haven't had a point addressed, definitely toss in a question, because we're going to have some time at the end for a question and answer period. But now let's talk about the recovery. Now, as I mentioned, we're all about the recovery. If we're looking at something that's an issue of business continuity for high availability, part of this is to have a solid recovery. Also for durability, you want to have a solid recovery. Basically, our Shadow Protect, our StorageCraft Image Manager, our cloud services, all of these tie in to make sure that you can recover quickly. We also have our Shadow Protect Granular Recovery for Exchange. So if you're hosting your own Exchange server, this is a tool that complements the other three to make sure that if you have that all-important invoice or contract in your CEO's mailbox that he inadvertently deleted yesterday, you can get that back for him. You can be the hero of the day, save the moment, and make it so that this business is profitable and does not lose business. The other thing, too, is that if you're looking at this from an MSP perspective, all of this is basically tied in to give you as an MSP the ability to not only provide the foundation of a reliable solution, but also to provide those aggressive SLAs to your customer. Really, if your customer is coming to you, they're relying on your experience and your knowledge, your tool set, and these tools complement your knowledge and experience to provide a premium service to those customers. You can go out and give them SLAs that help them recover in minutes and hours instead of days or weeks. This is really critical when it's coming to having that overall comprehensive solution that you provide the customers, because really the idea is that you want to be able to either keep your business running or help your customers keep their business running no matter what happens. And then when we're looking at high availability and recoverability, these two play a part tied in together to give you that continuous business. Your business is able to access the files that they need, read the emails they need, communicate effectively, process orders. Maybe it's a manufacturing server that you're building some piece of equipment using robotics. All of these things are tied to technology, and you really need to not only make sure that your business systems are available 99.999% of the time, but that the data inside of them is durable. It is something that is ongoing throughout all this time. And when you're providing this as an MSP, you're looking at ways of giving your customer the best benefit for their money. By the way, if you're looking at our MSP program, I just wanted to point out now that all of this information is available in the MSP portal. It's free to join as a partner in our partner program. We do offer free software as well as free money, the NDF funds that are available to help you to grow your business as an MSP. And it's definitely something to look into. But overall, I think that this is a great solution as far as building out a reliable product to keep your customers or your own business running no matter what happens. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and hand the time back over for question and answer, but it looks like we might have a survey coming up next. Is that right?
Yeah, we do have a survey, Stephen, and thank you so much for the time and a great presentation. And as I promised, if you don't have your pop-up blockers disabled, then you won't get to see this very important survey. So we've just pushed it out, and if for some reason you don't see it, by all means, just hit us back with that Ask a Question button, and we will make sure to push that out again. We do have a few questions here, so we want to get to those. First question is coming from Mitch, who's saying any high availability or disaster recovery solution is going to cost. How do I redirect my clients' questions about cost so they understand they're going to get what they pay for?
That's a great question, Mitch. I think what you're asking is how do I justify the price to what I'm getting for it? Well, one of the things that you'll want to do is stop selling on price. If you look at it, every solution out there has a number of intangibles associated with it. There are, for example, good customer service as far as what you're offering to the customer, your service level agreements, your knowledge level, your employees' knowledge level. A lot of these things are intangibles that really are hard to see in terms of what the price is that you're setting for your services. If we are simply looking at services as a commodity and any kind of backup and recovery tool as the same as every other kind of backup and recovery tool, it would be easy to say go with the cheapest price. But my concern is that oftentimes you get what you pay for. And if you go with the cheapest price, it's possible that you might not be getting the full functionality or the reliability that you're looking for. So if you're looking at a way of helping your customer to understand the value that you're offering, go out there and show it to them. Tell them the kind of service that you're providing. Spin up an image, do a backup of their system and spin it up as a virtual machine in a matter of moments, and show them just how easy it is for you to provide them with the high-level premium service that they're looking for.
Great.
Yeah, I think from the channel perspective, just jump in for a second there.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I think from the channel perspective, this is interesting as well because you do have an opportunity to adjust your margins a bit. And you may still not be offering the very cheapest solution, but you could look at it from the perspective of just offering the very best service and ensuring really premium SLAs for your clients, even if you want to lower your margins a bit and just take advantage of a pretty solid, a really solid service, so that you can be the best MSP providing, say, very high availability sites or optimum levels of service to your clients.
Great. Question coming in from Greg, and stand by, Chris, because I've got something else we're gonna ask you about here in just a minute. But Greg is asking about Shadow Protect granular recovery for Notes.
Oh, for Lotus Notes, we actually don't have Shadow Protect granular recovery for Lotus Notes yet. I can check into that for Greg further and give him some more information on that. Right now, we're looking at our granular recovery for Exchange, which is based on a specific solution for Microsoft Exchange. And we've built this from the ground up, so it's a solution that we fine-tuned to make it as fast and reliable and easy to use as possible. Now, if he wants to use our standard StorageCraft Shadow Protect, it is possible to do, as part of your backup and recovery solution, a Lotus Notes database. And it would, in fact, be a backup of the entire server that's running the Lotus Notes software on it. And so this would be something where I can give him more details about the process for backing up the Lotus Notes database and handling the transactions in it to get a clean backup. And then he could then restore this either as a virtual machine or restore it to new hardware to get to what he needs in terms of this Lotus Notes database. So it would work in terms of a backup and recovery, but as far as the granular recovery aspect, we've built that at this point for the Microsoft Exchange solution and instead of the Lotus Notes.
Okay, great. Next question is coming in from Dave, and this is for both Chris and Stephen. And Chris, we'll start with you on this, and then we want to hear from Stephen as well. But they want your thoughts on Hyper-V versus VMware. Really want a comparison of what each can offer.
I would say that those are that's the new religion as we move into increasingly virtualized environments. 10 years ago it was Mac or PC, and they each offer their own merits and detriments. I would say that Hyper-V is taking off in some pretty interesting ways, and with Server 2012, the latest iteration of Hyper-V that's included in it is a remarkably robust solution. And to say what you will about Microsoft, they've done a really nice job of bringing some very easy management tools to it. VMware, though, has a huge customer base, and for a good reason. It is a solid, high-performing system. You're not going to go wrong either way, but there is a really large base of people who can manage Microsoft servers, and if you can manage Microsoft Server, then you can manage Hyper-V. So sort of that you have to look at your own internal resources.
Your thoughts, Stephen?
Thanks. I'd have to agree in many cases with Chris. I think in the past it was always kind of an apples to oranges comparison when comparing Hyper-V with VMware. I admit VMware was the very first kid on the block. It was the industry's first x86 hypervisor, and they gained a lot of ground building out their vSphere solution. I think now Microsoft, with their latest mention of the Hyper-V the Server 2012 R2 Hyper-V in August, they have really come up and made themselves a very strong competitor with VMware, and it becomes almost a matter of what feature set are you looking for. Most of them have the same features, though they use different terminology. But for example, one thing that stands out in my mind is Microsoft's licensing is a lot more cost-effective than VMware's when it comes to running Windows servers. For example, Hyper-V license gives you 2 CPUs versus VMware is 1 CPU. So if you're looking at physical CPUs, that can add up for buying VMware licenses as opposed to Microsoft. Another thing is Microsoft's Hyper-V has SQL database server licenses included, and that can also add up if you're going with VMware as a solution. Hardware is similar. There's a few differences in terms of vSphere. Maximum number of VMs that you can have in a cluster is 4,000. Hyper-V, Microsoft's Hyper-V is 8,000. Really, I think if you're reaching up towards 4,000 or 8,000 virtual machines in the cluster, you're no longer a small or medium-sized business. But that is a difference. And then, of course, there's the operating systems. VMware supports a number of Linux distributions as well as the Mac OS, and that's not something that's supported in Microsoft's Hyper-V. So really, it's a matter of looking at what you need. If you're a small to medium-sized business, you're primarily a Windows-based shop, and you are concerned about licensing and want something that is a strong, robust hypervisor solution, then definitely go with Microsoft.
Cool. So next question is coming from Jim, who's asking if your cloud services offer spinning up a server in the cloud in the event of a total TSD.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for asking that. I mentioned earlier we have a number of things online as well to go over if you're interested. There's some videos and some white papers showing just how that works. But here's how it works for us. Our cloud services come in 3 tiers, basically. There's your basic, your plus, and your premium. And the idea is that you end up paying for what you need. You don't pay extras. It's a single fee. Your seeding the cloud is $10 US. That includes shipping the external USB drive, USB 3 drive to your office, and sending it back. So $10 is the most you're going to pay. The idea is that we make it as simple as possible to get your data in the cloud, and then we give you the ability and the complete control to manage that data. So our cloud services portal is a self-service portal. You can log in. If you're an MSP, you can set it up with multiple customers in there underneath your parent account. If you're a single business and you've bought this through our normal distribution channels, it's kind of like an iTunes purchase plan where you buy credits and then apply those to your account. But you have the complete control over seeing your systems in our cloud. And how you see those is, like for example, he was asking if we can spin that up as a virtual machine on our cloud, and the answer is yes. In the premium level, you have the ability to take any backup point in the chain that you've replicated up to our cloud and to virtualize that in seconds. Basically, we give you 30 days of free time per machine per year to test and to use in the event of a disaster. So if you have, like you mentioned, a total site-destroying event, a TSD, and you've got the entire sites down, you have the ability to spin up all of the critical systems you've replicated to our cloud as virtual machines hosted in our cloud for free for 30 days each. In addition, the nice thing about this is we've also built out, because we're all about the recovery, we've built out the solution so that you have public IP addresses. You have the ability to configure a virtual private network in our cloud, which you can integrate with yours. So if something were to go down, basically there may be just something as simple as a DNS change to point to a new IP address, and now you're up and running in our cloud. It's that easy. And the nice thing is, as I said, this is completely under your control. It's military-grade 256-bit encryption, and they are in a high level of standard data center, both here and in Canada.
Perfect. So speaking in Canada, another question around, does StorageCraft have any large data centers? Sounds like you do.
We do. We have several here in the U.S. They can be mirrored if you wanted to include that. We also have Canada as well. And you know what? I've been remiss for those guys across the pond, but Australia recently came online. So we've got Australia that is now online as well, and they're providing a data center there as well. So you've got U.S., you've got Canada, and Canada is nice because if you're Canadian, it's a direct shot to your Canadian data center. There's no involvement sending data across to the U.S. to have it uploaded back to Canada. It's all done right there in Canada. And then we also, as I mentioned, have it in Australia, and Europe is coming online shortly. So we're pretty much everywhere these days.
Great. Time for just one or two more. What additional resources should I investigate to provide a higher level of business continuity for my clients? Coming from John.
Oh, John, one thing I would highly recommend is that we have a white paper by Guy Barone that talks about disaster recovery and the steps in building out a good disaster recovery plan. And I think that disaster recovery plans are key to business continuity. There's also a number of other resources available besides this white paper by Guy. If you go to itrecoveryzone.com, itrecoveryzone.com, this will give you a wealth of resources that can help you to build out your business continuity plan. And on the right-hand side, underneath the resources, you'll find a link to Guy Barone's disaster recovery white paper. So definitely check that out. That's a great place to look.
Great. Luke is asking about how your solution compares to Dell's Aperture.
Interesting question, Luke. Of course, we're better. I think.
Shocker.
Sorry. Yeah, I know. No, but seriously though, when I look at them, one of the things I have seen, and I follow a lot of technical online forums and contribute there as well, and I'm in a lot of places where I see us paired against Dell Aperture. And one of the keys I've seen, because we're both image-based solutions, is that we're just more reliable as far as something that you can recover when you need it, a number of Windows-based operating system flavors, to new hardware. All of these things come into having an overall comprehensive solution that just works. And in this case, I would say that is where we beat Aperture hands down.
We've got a follow-up from Greg wanting you to know if you could touch briefly on the failback.
Okay. Before I talk about Greg's question about the failback, I wanted to just point out real quick for the previous question, we do have evaluation copies online, and that's something that you'll definitely want to try it, because you can go out there and basically download a copy, do a backup on a system, see how it works, restore the system, and just see how easy it is. Now, as far as the failback goes for our cloud, the thing about our cloud service is that it's something that you can go in there and spin up, as I mentioned, in seconds and even under a few minutes in most cases for systems. I've been doing a couple servers and laptops, and it usually takes me for those systems no more than maybe 30 seconds to spin up a virtual machine. And I've got them on a VPN. I've got an IP address associated with it. If I were looking at a site-destroying event and I wanted to say, how do I get a cost-effective solution that gives me not only durability but also high availability, this might be a way of meeting those requirements, because basically I don't want to spend a lot of money for that other location that has all the redundant hardware or the high availability hosting. I'm a small shop. I want to keep the cost down, and yet I want to have the performance and the functionality that high availability and a fast failover provide. In this case, what I would do is I would build out my local backups, because obviously we want your primary backup to be your local backup, because that gives you the fastest recovery as far as a bare metal recovery or restoring your systems back locally. But we also understand that physics dictates there is a limit to the amount of time it takes to transfer, say, 4 terabytes of data across a network, a gigabit network. This just takes time. The whole idea is that while you're waiting to bring your systems back up that you host, because they're your systems, you need to have something in place that gives you that failover capability that is part of your disaster recovery, your backup and recovery solution. And in this case, we have a number of products. We have our Virtual Boot product, which allows you to spin up a virtual machine using one of our images. You can use Head Start Restore to lay down incremental images to an image that you can spin up as a new machine if you need to. And now, of course, as he mentioned, we've got our cloud services, which allows you to send up incremental images throughout the day or schedule them at the end of the day and throttle the bandwidth. But the idea is that in our StorageCraft cloud services, you have all of this information there with just a few clicks away to get a virtual machine running in our cloud, so that you can get as close to that 99.999% uptime as possible. And giving you a virtual private network and IP addresses in the cloud just make it that much easier. It's not just archival anymore.
Very good, Stephen. Well, with that, we're going to have that be the last word. We have run out of time for today. If you've missed any portion of the event, it will be available in its entirety on demand. And speaking of on demand, you can find an entire library of terrific channel content, past, present, and future, by liking us on Facebook. That's Channelcast, or go to crn.com/channel-cast/index.htm. I want to thank my guests today, Chris Dawson and Steve Snyder, for being part of the event. And for all of us at the Channel Company, my name is Jonas Tishner. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.